property goes into that.
It is.
Every time I get there, outside of Long Beach. It got to the
Where was this?
Over a month ago.
DMV.
And it's been over a month sitting in the water, hasn't burned.
Well, it's kind of funny, when I went in to get my real ID, this is.
One of the other
That's
guys
how
that
we
got
did
there
it over
after
here,
that
over
one burned,
$40.
they were able to
So,
off,
they said, well, you need.
they
to
were
go
gonna
to
take
that
2 weeks to
track.
get a truck driver. One truck driver. Yeah, what's going on down there, man?
See, here's the thing.
I don't know what's going on, but I know for sure it's
I went
difficult
across
to get
this off
deliveries
and
in.
I-
And that container cost us $26,000 to bring over.
And at this point.
Oh, yeah, usually it's around $5,000 or $6,000. It's $26,000 per
So many
container.
thousands of.
They didn't,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
just show it. They wanted to see my driver's license.
Well,
It's
yeah.
funny, you get a real ID, I showed this driver's license, got my social security. I mean, it's so stupid.
That's hilarious.
You're
I
surprised.
got a passport card, you ever seen those?
Yeah.
Also by life.
But-
It's the size of a driver's license. And you can travel anywhere in North America with that.
When I
It's basically the Canada-Mexico card.
Yeah, or you can take your ship, or you can go on, rail or ship or water with that card.
Come on down.
You got sympathy in both paper.
You know, it's half that, you know.
I'm giving you, I'm turning this over to you.
Oh, yeah.
How you been, Jason?
Hey, good. How about you?
There it is, there it is. I think we're only seeing the beginning of it.
We never have to go back and look at something. It's just here. So just keep it down to this meeting, that's all I do.
Never goes away, does
They're
it?
making, they're saying like, oh,
You
we're
know?
gonna fix it.
Try this.
Yeah, it's 100%.
This is where we are.
Oh, okay. Saw that, Bob. That's good to hear.
Thanks, Steve. It was kind of weird handling it.
Oh, wow. How is that possible?
That's right. We are.
Really?
All right, guys, we're gonna get started. We got to, are you good, Jason?
Good.
We're good? Yeah, so we've got a guest speaker, as you all know, and I've got him lined up for 7:30 on a Zoom. So I figured, you know, we got about 25 minutes. We'll just take care of some club biz. We'll shoot the breeze. We'll have Don tell us what's going on at the Christmas party and whatever else we want to talk about. You know, I don't really have a big, huge agenda for this evening. And I'm sure others will think of things for us to discuss, which we will do, you know, vigorously, you know. And then at 7:30, we'll light up the Zoom. It's going to be on the TV. We've already tested it. Speaker works great, so we should be just fine to go from there. Okay? But first of all, let's go ahead and do the pledge real quick. DXB, you want to start us off?
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right.
All right, anybody remember the scout?
Two.
Let's do my duty.
Yeah, he's gonna.
What's that? I promise to do my duty. Yep.
Oh, there's the other lights, thank you. Good job, that helps with the video. But we'll kill it when we get to the meeting. Are you good if I just kind of roll here?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, all right, so guys, every year we start looking at doing an election, right, for officers and directors for the following year around October. September, October, we start kind of kicking that around. And then in November, which would be this meeting, that's when we're supposed to vote in officers and directors, right? For the past few years, COVID certainly took a toll on us there for a minute where that really wasn't all that practical. And even before that, for 2 or 3 years, it really just we really haven't required a vote per se, right? We just haven't required a vote because it's not like everybody's fighting to become a director, or something like that, so it's just people volunteer and cool, we got enough people, good, we're good to go. So that's how it's kind of been for many years now, is how it's been. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and personally, I kind of like that,
Continue on.
Huh?
Continue on.
Continue on, right? So I'm gonna propose we're gonna have an officer and director meeting. Now remember, If you're not an officer or a director, you're absolutely welcome to come to an officer director's meeting.
But you can't
Be
snore.
part of it. You can't snore. You can't snore, you must wear pants, and, you just, hello, come on in, grab a seat. You can't snore, must wear pants, and, you can't vote if there's something that needs to be voted on from the board, right? So, but you can be there and help participate. So I'm gonna do that in January. And I think in our bylaws and our constitution, I think we're supposed to do that at least a couple times a year, right? 2 or 3 times a year, something like that. And if you guys remember, it was, I think it might have been 2019 or 2020, it was probably 2019, I think we changed our bylaws and our constitution, or just our bylaws, I don't know. We changed it, right? Because we had really, the club has evolved so much over the years that we were just like out of compliance with our bylaws and constitution, like all the time. Like every day we were out of compliance, like we just weren't lined up. And the only reason that was is because it was just when the most recent revision was done, that's how the club operated at that time, right? So we decided, well, let's change them to fit what we do now, right? And we have, and so now we're in line with all of our bylaws and all that kind of stuff, which is great. So what I'm gonna propose on the January meeting is, I'm gonna propose that we have a January officer and director meeting. We'll try to have it right down here. We typically try to have those about 45 minutes to an hour before the actual club meetings, just to make it easy, because, you know, you can fly in here and then do the club meeting after that. And so I'm gonna propose that we have one on the January meeting, and I'm gonna propose that we make another addendum or change to the bylaws, and that's gonna be how we elect, or how we, I don't know what the right word is, if it's not an election, how we install or select or designate our annual officers and directors to be more of a volunteer basis, you know what I mean? Something like that, because I think that's a great way to do it. I actually do think it's a good way to do it, and it just makes it easy. And now, if this, you know, maybe things will change. You know, if we had 300 members and we had people that were dying to be an officer or a director, and you had people lining up for the positions, well, then we'd have to do a vote thing. You know, we would have to do that. But we're just, you know, we're a decent sized club, but we're not that big to where it just hasn't seemed that way anyway for about the past 4 or 5 years, right? So with that, all that said, okay, we sent out an email. And we were saying, if you would want to be an officer or a director, or you want to volunteer, let us know. Send an email back to us, right? And so some people did, okay? And so what we decided to do this year was, for those who sent the email back, then that would be where we start. That would be our starting place. And ironically, the amount of emails that came in looking to fill certain slots was the exact number that we needed for everything. So we didn't have anybody more or less for anything. So I have here who the 2022 officers and directors will be. And all we're gonna do here tonight is just, I'm gonna read it off. I'm gonna say this is who it is. Anybody wants to, you know, contest this in any way, that's perfectly fine. You know, we'll deal with that. But otherwise, it's just gonna be basically you guys saying, yeah, we accept it, right? We accept it, we're good with it. So, does that sound fair?
Good with it.
For doing this?
Good with it.
So, for the president, that would be me. KJ6RWQ, Frank. How's it going, man? Have a seat. I'll go ahead and do 2022 as president. I have no problem with it, looking forward to it, to tell you the truth. Our existing VP is volunteered once again, Doug, KK6LDS, to be the vice president. Brian is gonna stay on as treasurer, KB0 Alpha. Art volunteered to be secretary, WD6BQX. We had 4 volunteers for directors. Jason threw in his hat for another round. K6FAK. Is Will here? No? Will's in. KM6 SRX. Mike, WB6WYF, and Kellen, KN6 ETB. And those are the 4 directors who sent in saying they would like to be a director this year. That's where I'm gonna go with. Does that sound all right to everybody? Yep.
Yeah, if you will, I move we accept the list of volunteers for officers for next year.
Everybody agree? Second? All in favor?
Go with it. Thankful for
Anyone
volunteers.
opposed?
Thankful for volunteers.
Yeah, I'm thankful for volunteers too, you know, and, this will be a good group, and we're gonna have fun, and next year, when it comes around again, if you guys feel like you wanna do something, just please volunteer.
You made a motion, I need his name.
Ed, K6JLW.
And I'll hand that off to you, so you can put that in the record as well.
Yeah, we're gonna need to formalize that and
At the,
get you, do you have signing
yeah, I do.
on checks?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, you and I went down there and did that.
Okay, this, but Kevin's still on there and Brian BXP's on there,
Okay.
so we need to change it around.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have our new, EIN.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys for doing that. That made that easy. So now we can move forward into 2022. The only thing in between us and 2022 is Dawn's Christmas party. So, what we'll do is,
Don's catering.
we'll let Dawn give us a little update on that, on what's going on, and then we'll give you guys kind of our thoughts on how we're going to RSVP. We touch base on that on the Zoom meeting, but now that you're here, we'll touch base on that again.
Okay, guys, the Christmas party is gonna be December 9th. That's the second Thursday of the month, just like a normal meeting, except we're gonna start it at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. I think it's dinner, right? So, and it's gonna be at Mavericks, which is over on Sunset Boulevard in Suisun, right off Highway 12, on the northwest corner. Coming right, there's a gas station and then there's Mavericks.
Date again? Date?
The,
December 9th, that's a Thursday.
December 9th, our second.
Check your
Thursday.
calendar, make sure I got it right, but it's the second
No,
Thursday.
you're correct, you got it.
Okay. And the menu is going to be a choice, you'll have a choice of turkey, ham, or chicken breast with 2 sides to be chosen from 3 items, mashed potatoes, salad, or veggies. You can take 2 of the 3. Sodas, you know, soft drinks, that kind of stuff, iced tea will be served with it. And there is a bar there, but that's no host. You guys are on your own if you want to go to the bar. Let's see.
Got a price?
And the price is $2,000 a person.
Actually, $2,000 for one person. That person pays for everything.
We decided on $26 a person. That includes, you know,
Gratuity?
gratuity, everything, tax tip, and you can order it on PayPal. It includes the cost of PayPal. So, you know, everything is even. So just
Is
get
it
on
a
our
prepay?
website.
Is it a prepay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, no money at the door. We're gonna prepay it,
okay.
and so we can give them a number, and I guess we need it, the week before?
Well, I told them we try to have it in a couple of weeks, but if it takes another week, so be it.
So
You have to order the food to cover what we're gonna have. So I told them we'll probably have about 40, at least 40 people, maybe 50, because, you know, the guys and their wives and whatever, and they might bring some kids, who knows. So, it's a nice meal. The owner of Mavericks used to own Crepes and More that was across from the Wells Fargo on Jackson Street. And I guess they got freaky with the rents or something, and he said, I'm moving, so.
Is it same price for kids?
We never got a kid's price. I can ask, if you'd like, I can ask that question.
I don't ever remember seeing a kid at any Christmas party.
No.
We're all too old to have kids.
You mean the 5'6", 11-year-old?
Yeah. Jason.
Yeah.
We did?
Yeah.
Well, we better find that out.
Yeah, well, it depends how much they eat, yeah.
Unfortunately, Jason said,
Yeah, I'm
plans
gonna.
and leaving me hanging.
Teenagers,
Yeah.
They'll figure it out.
Yes.
Do we call the restaurant? Is that what we do?
No,
No.
you will get on our website.
Okay,
And you'll
And,
just,
our
you'll go on, like you do
got
your
everything
membership
organized.
like we do our membership and everything else, okay.
thing with
Exactly.
PayPal, and if you don't wanna do PayPal,
So we'll just walk in, it's already prepaid, if you want a drink, that's on you. We sit down and enjoy the meal, okay.
exactly.
Exactly.
no tip or anything, just,
Do you specify what you want then, or is this when we sit?
yeah, we're gonna have to do that.
Yeah,
When you
so
order.
again, it's turkey or ham or chicken breast, and if there's a vegetarian, we have a pasta dish.
So, the PayPal, so we would
I'll
send
have- I'll have to
figure
send-
it out?
I'll have to figure it out, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't make it easy for me.
No, I get it, because PayPal's not gonna, you can put that in a turkey, yeah, I get
If you
it.
wanna give me the $26, I'm fine with that.
Okay, okay, and I worry if I get a meal or not, right?
No, I'll just turn it over to Brian. Just, if you wanna pay cash or a check, you can take that, right?
No,
Yeah, beforehand.
okay,
Actually, a check and just mail it to me, mail it to the club or mail it to me. But,
I'm okay, me personally, I'm okay how we pay our dues,
okay, fine.
that's me.
But if anybody doesn't have PayPal, talk to me and let me know, we can.
Well, actually, when I pay the dues, I just do my debit card, and then,
Yeah.
I don't go through PayPal. I put my debit card in, and then on my billing, it shows up PayPal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're using PayPal, it's just that you're not using a PayPal account.
That's what I'm saying,
You're
yeah.
just.
So when you
you're
said
just-
some people don't have a
like a
PayPal account,
gateway.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's a service.
but we'll have it set up so you can select, so I can have all that information and we'll just go from there.
Wait, we pay dues? Oh.
We're supposed to. Matter of fact, I just took about
You
8
did?
people off who haven't paid their dues since
That's the master list.
2019 or,
And
Oh,
5
wow.
actual weekly roll call.
Okay,
so we've just
Well,
kind
we've
of.
got
I wanna get
awesome
this
grace
done
period.
because we're gonna have,
Sure.
our Zoom,
Yes.
presentation here shortly.
Okay,
I would appreciate some volunteers to help with putting the decorations on the tables, decorating the room for, for the party. Mike is on our committee and he's offered. Anybody else? Okay, maybe, Mike, would you just work with those guys?
Yeah, who are they?
I'll help.
Oh, okay. My wife will help too.
I need direction.
Anybody else?
Eddie,
Okay, Eddie.
okay?
Is it barbecued?
They do have barbecue there, but
We're not getting barbecue.
that's my understanding, no.
Okay.
We're getting turkey, ham, or chicken,
Turkey, ham, or
or
chicken breast.
pasta.
Or
Chicken
pasta.
Or pasta.
And there's three
And we get
sides to
potatoes,
choose,
gravy.
2 out of 3, salad, mashed potatoes,
Okay.
and veggies.
Did you have to decide that ahead of time, the sides?
I just, the main thing is the
The main course,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so we
Can
can order that.
they order enough ham or chicken, right?
Right.
And now salad, mashed potatoes, or what?
Can we get dessert?
Yeah, dessert?
I didn't ask about dessert, I guess.
Yeah, better.
I'll see if I can get it to throw in a pumpkin pie or something, I don't know, I'll ask.
Yeah, I just wanna kill a mosquito that's on you, just because it's driving me crazy.
Oh, thank you.
Either that or we'll
I'm
just
gonna
go.
close that door, because it's probably letting more in.
You gonna dust me off?
I'll give Ed a call.
If you have blood-sucking mosquito on you, I would kill it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Now, I'd like to be thinking about field day. I know it's way far in the advance. Yes, go, okay.
I was giving field day a thumbs up.
And so, Art had suggested a different location. Art, what was the name of the place you're suggesting?
Lagoon Valley, or else the cowboy campground up at Highway 20 and 16, I think it is, past Cache Creek all the way up to the top of the ridge.
Oh, it's a long way, yeah.
It's about 40 miles out of here. but
How many?
About 40 miles northwest, but it's up at a higher elevation, and
You got any trees, any
you
shade?
got trees, shade, and you got plenty of room because there's 27 sites that are available.
I bet the noise floor is low.
And there's a campground.
Yeah.
What noise?
You got a little elevation?
There is no noise up there, there's hardly any telephone poles, there isn't any electricity.
It's dark at night.
Yeah, well, if it's dark at night, you get to see sky, and it's stars, you know?
Maybe
Watch the
no
radio
wind.
waves go.
You said you're in the front.
Whatever we choose,
Yes.
I'd like you guys to all
No
be thinking
power,
about
no power,
where you'd
but
like to
there's,
go, the pluses and minuses. And at January's meeting,
Porta potties or,
we'll lock it in.
vault
Okay.
toilets?
The place we had it, this last year, this year is still available as far as I know. So,
Was there 3 sites or just those 2 sites?
Well, Art had mentioned Lagoon Valley, and
Okay.
what's the other place called?
Cowboy Campground.
Cowboy
And
Campground.
that's on Solano website, I believe it is. You can go, you can type it in, and then you can go, and you can view the whole thing all the way around.
Art and I are gonna drive up there, if anybody wants to join us to take a look at the campsite. Okay, Servando, anybody else? We'll go up there together and we'll kinda report back.
You talking about Cowboy
Oh, it's BLM, it's Calusa, Calusa County.
No? What's the?
Why? Nothing's there?
Lack of facilities.
Lack of facilities?
It's just a camp.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no, it's just.
Nothing.
There's no
Camp-
toilet?
yeah.
There's,
no outhouse?
there are toilets there already though. They have plenty of toilets up there.
They do.
Working?
Oh, yeah. They're vault toilets, just like they have in any campground or any National Forest campground.
Yeah.
A porta potty that's not clean or deodorized.
Oh, they keep it clean.
Yeah.
They even have it stored in the toilet paper.
Okay, well, would you like to join us on that trip up there just to check
Lagoon
it out?
Valley, I mean, how practical or how plausible is Lagoon Valley? I thought we couldn't go to Lagoon Valley.
I'll have to
After
check
the
with
meeting,
the,
give me a
they
sure I
have
have
your
the
medieval
information
acronyms
worked out.
there.
Okay,
And
that's all, the only other thing I'd like you to be thinking
it's not
about
a valley, so.
for activities
Depends on-
throughout the next year
Elevation sounds better than a valley.
is, I was thinking maybe have some workshops where we build something like we used to do. I pulled this up on, the Raspberry Pis, you can put those together, throw some whipped cream on top of, I don't know. And so maybe we have a workshop and build, all-star nodes, or something like that. So, over the next 2 meetings, because by January, we'll be ready to really have some of these kinds of workshops. Yes?
That might be a great idea if you can find them.
I know there's one model that's available, the other model, the high, storage one, is back ordered for 6 months.
Yeah.
So we need to decide it, early on.
Have you looked at Connecticut? Are they back ordered too?
I have
That
not,
stuff is back ordered.
I have not. So, because we have things going here tonight, let's defer this to our January meeting, but if you want to email me with your input on any other ideas for workshops, please feel free to do so.
Well, we're talking field day, we're talking about winter field day?
No.
Summer, okay.
If you want to go to winter field day, fine, but there's a bunch of us that are going to Quartzsite, and that's gonna interfere with the winter field day, so someone else would have to take charge of it here. We could be on the air at Quartzsite and participate in winter field day, but those of you that aren't out, that are here, we need to have a place to handle that. So I'm okay with that if someone wants to take the ball and run with that one. And those of us that are at Quartzsite will just log on and represent the club from Arizona. Okay, that's all I got. Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. I handed out these brochures. Did everybody get one?
Yes.
And this is for the Mars group. We have a base support team. Eddie's on it now, and I am, and is there anybody else in the club? I don't know in our club if there's anybody else. But we have a base support team. If you want to see an antenna array, they got acres of antenna farms there that we all get to use at Mars. And we have 5 stations there, and amplifiers, the whole thing, and we do a lot of digital. So if you're interested in that, look at the brochure, get back to me, and I can hook you up. All right, that's all I got for tonight.
Okay, well, we are at 7:25, and our guest is supposed to be on in 5 minutes, so we can,
The only thing I have, does anybody need a lanyard for their badge? Anybody else?
I already got one.
Well, I know I mailed out badges.
yeah, so we can shoot the breeze till, oh, here we go. It's John.
Well, that's what I was gonna do, I was gonna see how many people were on the,
Yeah, I can't answer questions. I don't know if anyone has a question on YouTube. Could you pull up chat on YouTube? Because I can't.
Hey, John,
I saw a few come
how
through.
are you?
What's it on?
Good.
So go to your
Good. Let
email.
me just
Did you get an email
change
today?
my audio output.
I got like 68 emails.
Okay, well,
one that you
look
sent out?
for
Okay, give us a
Jason
check, John, let me make sure I can hear you.
Look for Jason
All right, here I am.
Gmail.
All the way from beautiful downtown Santa Maria. And so everything working fine?
Yeah, no, it's great, in fact.
Good.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for being here.
There are 9 people.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I like doing these presentations.
Terrific, terrific. Oh, we got Bob. So what I'm gonna do is there will be other people joining us, John, on this meeting. Don't worry, you'll be pinned, so we'll just see you in your presentation.
Yes.
And I'll have everybody else muted, but some people might ask questions in the chat, so.
Sure.
That'll be good.
That'll be fine.
Yeah. So this is Bob Hopkins. He's one of our guys. So, yeah, we've got just a couple of minutes, John, so thanks for jumping on just a little bit early.
My pleasure.
All right. So hello, Bob Hopkins, hello, Bert. Just so you guys know, we'll stay muted for I'm gonna pin John when we start, which will be in just a couple of minutes. But you guys just stay muted, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. When we're done, you can open up and talk all you want. But while we're doing this, just stay muted. And we should be fine. So John, you're familiar with sharing your screen and all that kind of fun stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I've
good.
done lots of these Zoom
You're
presentations.
a Zoom guy. Okay, good.
And by the way, John has another presentation on balance.
Yeah, I made you a co-host, John. You may have to click something or something, I don't know. But I think you are officially a co-host. I am gonna, is it pin, Jason, or spotlight?
A pin will work.
Pin will work. All right. All right.
Oh, look at that mic.
Yeah, he's got a fancy mic.
That's the snowball.
I wanna hang it on my tree.
So just another minute or so, John.
Okay, so here's the YouTube.
Is there any questions?
Just remember,
That's
guys,
all I was wondering.
if you're on the Zoom call, to please
Not yet.
mute yourself. Make sure you're muted, so we don't, mess up John's presentation.
John gave his presentation at PacificCon, and a few of us were down there and saw it, and I thought you guys would really enjoy it. He did a nice job there, John.
You might not be able to hear. You hear me right now?
Yes, fine.
Okay, great, thanks. Alright, so somebody's not muted. Please mute yourself, everybody. Let's see.
That's what my wife always says to me.
I'm gonna take him out of pin mode real fast, just so I can see everybody if I can. I don't do that. Gallery. Here. I don't know if I can. Okay, so here we go.
Even John's muted. Oh,
Yeah, he muted himself.
Murray isn't down at the bottom.
Yeah, Murray, can you hit your mute button, Murray? I don't know if we're hearing some people or some rustling around once in a while, and I don't know if that's you or not. There's Bruce, make sure he's muted. We definitely want to mute Bruce. Definitely.
He's not even showing his face.
Yeah, we're here. Mute Murray.
Thank you, Bruce.
I can't mute him, it's not giving me the option. Something wacky's going on Murray. All right, we are going to pin you up to the top there again. Go back here. And speaker. There you go. And I think we're ready for you, John. Just can't hear you yet.
All right.
Yeah, we got you. We're
Let me
good.
go on, mute myself here, turn that off.
Yep, you're
Very
good.
good. Now I should be properly unmuted.
You are.
Okay, and if you're ready for the presentation, I will share my screen
The
here
lights off.
and do a share. There we are. And turn that off and come down here and open this up. There we are. And there's the PowerPoint slideshow from the beginning. Now, I'm assuming here at this point, you're all seeing the intro slide.
Yes, we're good.
And also, if you, over at the right of your screen or wherever else it is, you've got the little thumbnails showing of other speakers or other attendees. I recommend you go up to the top, up here to this bar at the top and click on the little minus sign. It'll reduce those thumbnails.
We've done that.
We've done it, we just see you.
You're good. We just see you and your PowerPoint.
Okay, good. All right, well, thank you for inviting me here. Vacaville holds quite a bit of history to me. I lived in the Bay Area for quite a while, and I remember when the nut tree first opened up. For a long time, we just saw white billboards with a green tree in the middle of it. Everybody wondered what in the heck was coming. After that time, it became quite a favorite of mine. So I've certainly been there. Anyway, this is a topic that I have been dealing with for quite a long time now, for a reason you'll see internally in the presentation. But it's a question that a lot of hams still have. Because antenna tuners have been around for a long time. They go way back to the beginning of radio, for that matter. And of course, here's probably one of the oldest of the ham radio antenna tuners you'll still find, and probably still find in use, the famous Johnson Viking Matchbox. Great old tuner, and some hams are still using them. So antenna tuners are nothing new to the ham world. And yet, antenna tuners, as I found out by talking to many hams, are still kind of undiscovered country for a lot of hams. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding antenna tuners, old wives' tales and ideas about what kind to get and what they do and where you put them and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we want to talk about here tonight by specifically addressing remote auto tuners, but we'll cover tuners to some degree in general as well to clear up some of these mysteries. Many misconceptions about tuners still persist. The reason number one, as I see, and there are two basic reasons why their tuners are mysterious to hams, is hams kind of lump tuners all into one category. But the truth of the matter, there isn't just one category of antenna tuner. There are two basic antenna tuner categories. And the knowledgeable ham needs to know the difference between these two categories. And it's quite distinct, even though it involves many antennas. Some fall in one category and some fall in another. And these are the two categories. Antenna tuners come in two varieties. The kind you put in your shack. These are antenna tuners that are used with resonant antennas. We'll get to what a resonant antenna is presently. And the other category of antenna tuner is the remote antenna tuner. That is an antenna tuner you put out at the antenna. And these categorically are used with non-resonant antennas. Now maybe to some of you, particularly if you're a bit new to ham radio, that latter term may surprise you, a non-resonant antenna. What in the heck is that? Oh, we're going to talk about that. It's
recording in progress.
Okay, the recording's in progress, I got it, and that's fine with me. My material is public domain as far as I'm concerned. All right, here's a classic example of an antenna tuner that maybe some of you have something like it. And it's an in-shack tuner, or a tuner, as I will clearly see, that's made for resonant antennas. As you can see it here, I have one very much like this. Now, a lot of hams think that this kind of a tuner is the only tuner they'll ever need, because there is only one kind of tuner, this kind. No, that's not true. This isn't the only tuner you'll ever need, and this isn't the only kind of an antenna tuner that exists. there are two categories of in-shack and remote tuners. Now here's another in-shack tuner that maybe a lot of you have. Particularly if you've got a fancy rig like this Kenwood TS990. You see the arrow pointing over there to the little key marked AT for antenna tuner. There's a built-in automatic antenna tuner in this rig. And it works quite well for the kind of antennas that the in-shack tuner works well with. And a lot of hams think though, that, well, I've got the automatic tuner in my rig, it'll tune up anything. Oh, no, it won't. And don't fall into that trap. This is so be aware, that automatic antenna tuner in your fancy rig will not tune up any antenna. It'll tune up many antennas, but not all of them. So this is not the only tuner you'll ever need. Don't believe that old wives' tale. Now here's another in-shack tuner that maybe some of you may be purchasing. I own one, not this particular one, but I own an LDG, full gallon in-shack auto tuner. Works very well. Forget the AT1000, I think it's called. Good auto tuner, but it's an in-shack tuner. And we'll just make a distinction of those two types here as we move along. These are good tuners, and this one will handle high power. Then there are the remote tuners. These are the tuners that go not in your shack, but at the antenna. Now, it might not have occurred to many hams that antenna tuners might belong out at the antenna instead of in your shack. Because a lot of hams think, where does a tuner go? Beside your rig, and right in your station. And that's all you'll ever need. That's not true. It's an old wives' tale. Now here's the original, probably the first one that appeared on the market. And you can still buy it, by the way, still available, made by the SGC company, GC239. This is a 200 watt. This is the original auto tuner. It's a remote auto tuner, or sometimes called a coupler. In the commercial world, this kind of a tuner is usually called a coupler. And there are plenty of places in the commercial world that they use these kind of tuners. And hams are becoming more and more familiar with them and using them more and more often. I had one of these, used it for quite a while. Good tuner, you still buy one. Well, a lot of hams think, I'll never need one of those. I don't need a tuner out at my antenna. I just got the one in my shack, built into my rig. I'm happy as a clam. Don't be so sure. And here's another little automatic remote auto tuner that became quite popular and still available. You can buy it for $299. I have one of these, by the way, mounted in the bed of my pickup truck, right next to a CB whip, which it feeds. And this is a remote auto tuner. It's mounted right at the antenna. And this little ICOM AH4, good little tuner. They call it the long wire tuner, but it's basically a remote auto tuner. Here's a common one that works very well, made by MFJ. I have one of these, 993 BRT, sells for about $350. It'll handle 300 watts. But this is, again, an antenna tuner that doesn't go beside your rig. It goes out there at the antenna. And we're going to learn here presently why. Why would you put a tuner out at your antenna instead of at the rig? Because that's where I thought all tuners go. No, they don't. But there is a reason why you might need one of these. Even if you think that tuner I've got in my rig or sitting beside me on my radio console is all the tuner I'll ever need, there's a reason why you might need one out there at the antenna. And this is what this talk is about. Okay, and the reason you're going to need one out at the antenna in some cases is just like there are two categories of tuner, there are two categories of antenna. And the two categories match each other. The ones that go in the shack are the resident antennas. The ones that go out at the tuner are for the non-resident antennas. So let's go into that distinction. Non-resident and resident antennas. Now, if you're a new ham, you may be confused by this term, non-resident antennas. You must think, well, an antenna is supposed to be resident, isn't it? No, an antenna doesn't have to be resident. Any piece of metal out there in space can be made to transmit, but it isn't necessarily a resident piece of metal. And this is the basic distinction here. There are two kinds of antennas matched by two kinds of tuners. And that's what if you take anything away from this little talk, take that with you. Okay, here are some resident antennas. These are the kind of antennas that most hams like and are familiar with. Here we go. I'll get entered the writing room.
I'll get them.
Gets admitted there. Okay, very good. Okay, these are resonant antennas. This is, as I said, the kind of an antenna that hams traditionally think about when they think about going out and buying an antenna for HRO or wherever they're going to buy it, or making one themselves. If you've been a ham very long, you've probably used what you see down there in the lower left, the standard 468 divided by megahertz to build yourself an inverted V or a dipole out of wire. That's a resonant antenna. It's tuned up at a given frequency. Up in the upper left, you see the real common type of a resonant antenna, a nice big beam antenna, which is resonant on all sorts of bands. And what does it mean to be resonant? It means if you look at the SWR on that band, it's low. That's what a resonant antenna is. Just like you see over there at the right. There's a Hustler 5BTV, I think it is, antenna, showing the SWR curves for various bands, 40 through 10 meters. And notice that where you want to operate it, it has a low SWR. That's a characteristic of resonant antennas. In the middle, you see a spider beam. These are becoming quite popular antennas, fiberglass beams pulled up by wire hexagons or octagons, and made at different sizes for different bands. All of those antennas are resonant, low SWR at a particular frequency, all coupled to one feed line. So when you hook up your radio to this antenna on any band that you want to operate on, the SWR is low and the antenna is resonant. That's a resonant antenna. This is the kind of an antenna hams tend to think is the only kind of an antenna. No, 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 no. There are numbers of good antennas that don't fall into this category. Here are some good examples of that. The military knows this. There's a Humvee there on the left with a non-resonant antenna sitting on the back of that Humvee. And right next to it, guess what? A remote auto tuner, because that antenna is non-resonant. If you just hooked coax up to that antenna, it wouldn't show you a low SWR on any band. And the military has lots of bands to operate on. Look at the one at the bottom. Maybe some of you have made an antenna like this. I have one. It's a loop of wire that runs around the top of the eaves of my house. Some guys load up rain gutters and connect them together. Basically, that's a non-tuned or a non-resonant antenna. And it needs that auto tuner at the antenna to make it resonant. That's the purpose of the auto tuner. Look at the right there. There's a plain fiberglass whip, probably one of those windsock poles with a piece of wire helically wrapped around it. That's a non-resonant antenna. You tried to hook coax directly to that antenna, you wouldn't get low SWR anywhere you wanted to use it. How do you make it work? A non-resident antenna tuner. That's or remote auto tuner. As you see there, that's the little AH4 that I showed you earlier. So this is the typical setup for a non-resident antenna. It has a tuner at the base, at the antenna. That's fundamentally a part of any non-resident antenna. And believe me, there are many good non-resident antenna designs becoming even more popular as time goes along. For example, here are some typical non-resident antennas. ZEPs, Wyndham's G5RV, end-fed long wires, off-center fed dipoles. Or another thing, suppose you want to run your 40-meter antenna on 20 meters. It suddenly has become a non-resident antenna. So here, there's lots of non-resident antennas out there. Or if you want to tune up your 10, 15, and 20 meters on 17 meters, which it wasn't designed for. It's a non-resident antenna on 17, but it's a resident antenna on 20, 15, and 10. Therefore, you need a tuner out there at the antenna. Here's perhaps the most popular of all non-resident antennas. Some hams think this is a magical antenna. The 43-foot vertical with 16 nice 43-foot radials mounted a bit above ground. Some people think this is a miracle antenna. Well, it is a good antenna, believe me. It certainly is. A 43-foot vertical against 16 above ground radials like this is an excellent antenna. But, as I'm going to show you, it is a non-resonant antenna. You can't feed it directly with coax. You need a tuner at the base. And this is the proof of it. Here's an Easy Neck sweep of a modeled 43-foot vertical with 16 43-foot radials mounted just above ground, which is the best place to put radials. Buried radials are much less effective. Anyway, as you can see here, this is a chart or a graph of the SWR from 80 meters up through 10 meters. And as you can see, there are only 3 frequencies at which this 43-foot vertical is naturally resonant. 5.5 megahertz, 17 megahertz, and in one of the ham bands, 28. And all of the other ham bands, the 43-foot vertical against 16-foot radial, 16 43-foot radials is a non-resonant antenna. It can't work by itself without a remote auto tuner. And as you can see, all of the ham bands are up there in the non-resident part of it. Only one of them is down in the resident mode, and 2 bands that you don't use. So this is the difference between a resident and a non-resident antenna. How did I get introduced to non-resident antennas? Well, I created this off-center fed, no radial, 20-foot flagpole, because I live in this small mobile home here where antennas are not permitted. I needed to have myself an HF antenna. So I created this 20-foot antenna, which is just basically 2-inch tubing, but it has 2 insulators in it, as you can see, because it's a half-wave antenna, not a quarter wave. There are no radials here. Where am I going to put them? Am I going to dig up that lawn or that nice landscaping that my wife has gone to so much trouble over the years to create? I can't do that. Besides, I'd have to go under that pavement there. And there's no room out there for radials. So I decided the only way I can get myself a HF antenna up is to make it a half wave. So it doesn't need radials. An off-center fed half wave. That's why it has 2 insulators. One at the bottom, because it's hot at the bottom, because it's a half wave. The end of it's hot, just like the top is hot. Whereas a quarter wave is low, is cold at the end. It's fed there. And the antenna is fed up through the coax, up through the antenna tubing, to the off-center fed insulator at the top. So this antenna requires 2. This is a non-resonant electrical half wave, no radial HF antenna, but it has to have an auto tuner. Now this is where I became introduced to this particular antenna. And this antenna works very well. No, it's not a 12-element killer beam at 100 feet, but it works very well. Made lots of contacts on it, on all bands. Actually, this kind of an antenna is used rather extensively in the commercial world. I was wondering what happened to HF for the marine world, the boating industry. And I remember traveling around around a lot in my scuba diving days and listening to the chatter on the fishing boats or the skin diving boats on roughly around 2.5 megahertz. I wondered what happened to that. Well, they're still using HF in boats, particularly boats that go to sea. Like this is a heavy marine trawler, fishing trawler. And there you can see the non-resonant antennas that they're using. One of them is a commercial whip, the Shakespeare 5300, a very popular marine whip. But
Kathy's already done with hers, you still got yours to go? Kevin, is it done?
what's happening? I'm hearing somebody else.
Sorry, yeah, let me see if I can find it, yeah.
There's Bert.
No, I got him. Go ahead,
Are we
John.
clear?
Yeah, we're clear, go ahead, sorry. Oh, yes, we're clear, sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, no problem, I just want to be sure everybody's hearing me. Here you can see two non-resonant HF antennas. Antenna coupler on top of the boat there, and a wire antenna up to a little pole at the front. Also the Shakespeare 28-footer, which is a commercially available marine whip. And this is a common use. You might think, but do boats still use HF? Of course they do. When they go to sea, HF is very important to them. And it's mostly single sideband, but it almost always involves an antenna coupler or an auto tuner at the base of the antenna, which is referenced against the sea as the ground reference. So there's a wire down usually to a stainless steel plate bolted to the bottom of the hull. So the marine bands are still very common, HF. It was the Pentagon Amateur Radio Club, this one that you see here, yes, there's a radio club in the Pentagon, introduced me to the use of that Shakespeare whip. In fact, you can see one of them over there in the background, that they have it up on the roof. And they run an auto tuner up on the roof of the Pentagon to run all HF frequencies. Lots of radios in the Pentagon. This is the Ham Radio Club in the Pentagon. I visit them frequently. Just for your curiosity, and you don't need to know this, but this was kind of interesting to me. There are just as many HF marine bands as there are HF ham bands. The marine bands are shown in black, while the ham bands are shown in red. So you can see there are lots of HF marine bands, and ships that go to sea still use radio on the shortwave frequencies or HF, but it's almost all single sideband now. That's just a little FYI, which I found interesting. All right, let's get down to some nitty gritty here. How do auto tuners work? Here was the original auto tuner, the one that you didn't have to turn knobs to make work. Created and introduced back in 1996 by this fellow, WD8OYG, who was working for one of the tuner companies at the time. Built this auto tuner. And you can see the basic ingredients of it here. It consists of a row of inductors, those red toroid coils there on the right, with various numbers of turns on them. And on the left, you can just barely see them, little black blobs there to the left of the relays. Those are the capacitors are down the middle under the yellow element. They're silver mica capacitors. And two banks of relays that can switch in or switch out any number of those coils or capacitors. And it's all done under the control of a little microprocessor or CPU, as directed by a little SWR bridge, which is also on the same board. There's one more relay, which you see there in the middle, which we'll get to in a minute. It's called the high-low impedance relay. This is a typical modern auto tuner if you buy one, whether it's out at your antenna or in your shack. They all work the same way, like this. It all goes back to a simple fact, and the way they're based on a simple fact that a radio pioneer, Philip Smith, quite a brilliant guy, who invented the Smith chart, which some of you will be familiar with, and most of you will have heard of. This is a Smith chart you see in the background. Philip Smith noted that 4 simple circuits called L matches, an L, an inductor, and a C, a capacitor, hooked up in an L pattern, like you see here, either with the arm of the L in and the capacitor out, or the arm of the L out and the capacitor in, or the other way around. So there are 4 combinations. You can hook up a coil and a capacitor in an L network. Philip Smith noted that virtually anywhere on that Smith chart, that is, any impedance that any antenna can throw at you, can be matched by one of those 4 L matches. And they can be discrete L matches, or they can be variable L matches, or they can be auto tuners. But this is the basic ingredient of the auto tuner. It's an L match, one of those 4 kinds. He also noticed that on the left, those 2 ones on the left, parallel C, series L, or parallel L series C, matched low impedance antennas. He also noticed that the other combination, series L, series C, parallel C, parallel L, will match the high impedance portion of the Smith chart. And virtually any impedance can be matched with one of those simple L networks, which can be nothing more than a little coil and a little capacitor. Of course, that's only at 1 frequency. And but this is the basis of all these auto tuners. In fact, the basis of any tuner is based on L matches. Okay, here's an auto tuner. Here's a schematic. I think this is my LDG AT1000 values. You'll notice that there are 8 relays, and that can hook that can hook capacitors or inductors into circuit for you. And the other set of relays is not shown in this diagram. There are two sets of 8. I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. Those are the coils and the capacitors. I'm sorry, not showing the relays. There are 2 banks of 8 relays which switch 2 banks of either coils or capacitors in and out of the circuit. And if you follow the circuit, you can see how it happens. And there on the left, middle left, is that impedance switching relay, which switches these L matches from either parallel in or series in for high or low impedance half of the Smith chart. This is the basic structure. But notice, the coils and the capacitors are arranged in a binary sequence. In other words, double values, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, 0.5, so forth for the coils, and 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 160, so forth for the capacitors. So the microprocessor in the auto tuner can switch in these in a binary sequence. Of course, microprocessors speak binary, and can give you almost any value from twice the maximum value to the lowest value shown here. In other words, it can create quite an immense range of L matches just by switching relays directed by a little microprocessor being directed by an SWR bridge. It's all built into the auto tuner. Okay, that's how they work, basically. Fundamental reason for all tuners. Now, this is something that a lot of hams don't understand. All right, let's take the simple setup of a ham radio station. On the left is your rig. That's source of RF. On the right is your antenna, a load, some kind of a load, the source and the load. And in between is a piece of transmission line. I'm showing a piece of our G58 here, but it can be any transmission line, open or coaxial, which couples the 2 of them together. This is the basic ham rig, as all of you certainly know. Now, here's the important principle. All 3 of these entities, if you want a 1-to-1 SWR to be present, and you want as much of the power to get from your you're rigged to your antenna. All three of these entities have to be 50 ohms. They have to show a natural impedance of 50 ohms. Now, I always puzzled, why is a transceiver on the left there at 50 ohms? How do they make it? What does it mean when you say a transceiver is it has a 50 ohm output? It's quite simple. We all know Ohm's law up there, E equals IR or E equals I impedance, IZ, DC or AC impedance or resistance. That's Ohm's law. A transceiver is a 50-watt device because it produces RF at a certain ratio of voltage to current. And that ratio, by Ohm's law, must always be 50 ohms. That's what they're designed to do. So a 50 ohm transceiver, which it should be here in this case, produces RF at a 50 ohm ratio. That's why we call it a 50 ohm device. We need to hook that up to a 50 ohm transmission line. We hook it up to some other impedance transmission line. We won't get full power out, and some of it will be wasted. And that 50 ohm transmission line must be hooked to an antenna which is 50 ohms, or resonant, if you want the thing to transmit, be transferred fully. This is the basic structure of a ham radio. 3 50 ohm devices, 50 ohm radio, a 50 ohm transmission line, and a resonant 50 ohm antenna. That's what we need to get full power to the antenna and to make the maximum amount of radio waves with this system. However, many hams are laboring under the false concept that there are 2 ways to use a tuner. You can put it in the shack. Some hams think that's the only place you ever put a tuner. Or you can the other way is to put the tuner out at the antenna. And this works very well. Either one of these works very well, provided, and remember this, provided, that antenna out there is resonant. If it isn't resonant, this doesn't work. In this case, it doesn't matter whether the tuner's in the shack or whether it's out there at the antenna. If you feed a resonant antenna with either one of these, you're going to get all the energy most of it going out there, and the loss will be very low. But suppose you put a non-resonant antenna out there, like my flagpole. Now what happens? If you put the tuner in the shack, you're going to get terrible loss. And the loss is going to occur in the transmission line, in the coax. Lots of hams think tuners are high loss devices. No, what's the high loss with tuners is if you put coax after them and feed a non-resonant antenna. Now, if you put the auto tuner out at the non-resonant antenna and tune it up with the auto tuner, then the loss in the coax will be low. So this is the only way you can feed a non-resonant antenna, is by putting the tuner at the base. You can't use an in-shack tuner for a non-resonant antenna. Otherwise, you're going to eat all your power up in the coax and possibly damage your tuner. Even the ARRL says this. Here's a little thing from their website. I know you're not supposed to, any good PowerPoint presenter knows, don't read the slides to the audience, but I'm going to do it anyway. They say, an antenna tuner is not a good idea when using coaxial cable that is after the tuner with high FWR in the cable. The tuner may provide a 50 ohm match, yes it will, but the high SWR still exists between the antenna and the tuner and the antenna. This translates to high losses in the coaxial cable. So if you can remember anything from this presentation tonight, just remember, if you put the tuner in the shack, you can't have a non-resonant antenna out there fed with coax. It's just a no-no. Let me prove this to you. Here's an actual measured plot with a VNA of a 43-foot vertical over 16 radials over average soil. Here's the SWR that antenna will show you on the various bands. You notice on 80 meters, it's over 100 to 1. 5 meters, as we showed you earlier, is not bad. You could use it there with coax. 40 meters, bad SWR. 10 meters, bad. 10 megahertz, bad. 14 megahertz, 20 to 1 SWR. And so only on 10 meters, as we saw earlier, and 28 megahertz and 5 megahertz is the SWR low. All those other bands for that 43-foot vertical are very high SWR. And if you try to feed that very high SWR antenna with coax, with a tuner in your shack, you're gonna burn up incredible amount of power, not in the antenna. It won't make radio waves, you'll just make heat in the coax. Okay, here's the 20-foot flagpole that got me started. This is, again, a VNA reading of this 20-foot flagpole that I took at the base of the antenna with my VNA. And as you can see, there are some bands on which the SWR is pretty good, but most of the bands, the SWR is pretty bad. So this antenna can't be fed with coax or transmission line from a tuner in the shack. Otherwise, you're going to get terrible loss. Let me show you this. Let me prove it to you. Here's the SWR. And all these next little graphs will be for 100 feet of transmission line. Here's RG58, the poorest transmission line that we can buy. But with the SWR and the coax 1 to 1, which is, by the way, where all of the tables in the book are rated. Don't look in the handbook and say, oh, the loss in my coax is going to be 4 dB. It's only 4 dB if you've got a resonant antenna out there. If you have a non-resonant antenna, the loss is going to be way higher, as you're going to see here in a minute. But here's how much loss you can expect. If you got a resonant antenna out there, and you're feeding it with 100 feet of RG58 on 4 significant bands. 80 meters, you're getting a bit over 80% of the power out. 10 meters, you get about 55% of the power out. At 2 meters, you're only getting about 20% of the power to the antenna. And look at 450. You're getting 5% of the power out because the coax is eating it all. Now, let's increase the SWR out there by saying you're not trying to feed a non-resonant, you're trying to feed your 43-foot vertical out there with an antenna tuner in the shack and 100 feet of RG58. Notice how much the power has gone down. You've lost a lot more power. Where's it gone? It's heating up coax. That's all it's doing. It's not making radio waves. And here's RG58, 100 feet of it again, with 100 to 1 SWR. We just saw a couple of minutes ago that on some bands we can get as much as 100 to 1 SWR on a non-resonant antenna, like a 43-foot vertical. And as you can see, trying to feed a non-resonant vertical with RG58, 100 feet of it, best you're ever going to get out is 20% of the power or less. Might say, okay, I'll use some really classic coax. All right, let's take some real high-class, low-loss coax, LMR 400. Here it is at the best of cases when it's feeding a resonant antenna, 1 to 1 SWR. And as you can see, the power out is pretty good. But even for LMR 400, which is good coax, on 440, you're only getting half of the power out there. Coax is still eating half of it. But it's still usable, pretty reasonable performance. Remember, this is 100 feet of coax, quite a lot of coax. Let's suppose we raise the SWR, though, by trying to feed a non-resonant antenna. Uh-oh, we've lost a lot of power here. And that's all gone to eating it up in the coax due to 10 to 1 SWR. Let's take it down to 100 to 1 SWR. Notice how much power we're getting out of LMR 400, probably one of the best coaxes you could buy. We're not getting more than 30% of the power out on any band by trying to use the tuner in the shack. Sure, the tuner in the shack may show you got a 1 to 1 SWR at the tuner, but you don't have a 1 to 1 SWR in the coax or at the antenna. Now, some people think, oh, okay, I'll beat the story. I'll use open wire line to feed my antenna. Here's another myth. A lot of hams think open wire line is lossless. It is not lossless. There's no such thing as a lossless transmission line. Why do you think stations like Radio Luxembourg and so forth space the wires 2 feet apart on their open wire transmission line? It's because there's loss in open wire transmission line. It's less than coax, but it's not remarkably less. In fact, here's a little tip for you. Don't use 300 ohm TV ribbon and think that you're getting low loss. 300 ohm TV ribbon isn't any better than LMR 400. So there's a little rule of thumb for you. Okay, here's 450 ohm open wire, slotted open wire line at 1-to-1. As you can see, it's pretty good, 100 feet of it, and you're still getting 55 watts out at 440 out of 100, and you're getting about 93 watts out at 80 meters, but you're still losing some because open wire line is not lossless. Here's what happens in open wire line at 10-to-1. Well, yeah, you're still getting pretty good use, and you can see the amount of power is better. And here's 450 ohm at 100-to-1 SWR. Well, not bad. So this might mean if you're willing to put up with quite a lot of loss in open wire line, you might be able to feed a non-resident antenna with fair results. So here's the conclusion. Here's what you take away with you. Here's what you put in your bag of radio tricks. For non-resident antennas, antennas that don't naturally show a 1-to-1 SWR, the tuning must be at the antenna, not in the shack, unless you want to give up a lot of your power in the coax. So here's a sidebar. It's another ham myth. I've heard a lot of hams voice this myth. Antenna tuners, I don't like them, they're lossy. No, they're not. Antenna tuners are, even the simplest ones are still pretty efficient devices. Here's a little quote from the QRZ forum. Usually, antenna tuner losses are very small if the tuner is built with large, high Q components. So if you've got a good quality big antenna tuner, it's not the antenna tuner that's losing the power. It's because you're trying to feed a non-resident antenna with a piece of coax after the tuner. There's where the loss is. The reactants in the tuner, the coils and the capacitors, they don't consume power. They only transform it, unless they're very poorly built components. Unless the coil wire is very small and the capacitor is very lossy. But most tuners have big coils and wide-spaced capacitors. The loss is very small in most antenna tuners, including the auto tuners. So let me give you a closing example of how I use this. Here's my double inverted delta HF skeleton slot antenna in the backyard of my small mobile home park. I have this much backyard, and besides I have a park that doesn't permit antennas. They don't know what this thing is, and it looks kind of innocuous. It's been up for a year and nobody's paid any attention. It's a double inverted delta wire antenna. And you see down there at the base a blue tub. It's one of those, those things you can buy to store your gear in. For a long time, I ran this with a remote auto tuner, an expensive one at the base, until I realized I don't need to go to all that expense to run a non-resident antenna. And I thought, there's a simpler way to do this. So I just bought myself a little rotary inductor off of eBay, I think it was, and a rotary capacitor also off of eBay. And I built myself a little adjustable L-match. Remember, an L-match will match any non-resident antenna virtually, within some limits, of course. And then I put some plugs at the back so I can change it from a parallel in to a parallel out, just like the auto tuner. This little $20 manual tuner out there at the antenna, which I can just simply step out and turn the knobs until it lines up with the marks I made on the front of it, because I tuned it up once on all bands, know how many turns to use, and how much capacity to dial in on the front. I can make any band work fine here. Then I go into my shack and I touch it up with the auto tuner in my shack. But then I don't get much SWR in the coax. So this is a very inexpensive way to get rid of having to buy the expensive auto tuner at the base. But you still need one if the antenna is non-resonant, like this double inverted delta skeleton slot of mine. In case, by the way, you haven't availed yourself of the my book on slot antennas for ham radio, The Forgotten Antenna, which has been around quite a bit. This particular book is available on Amazon.com, and just search for that title, Slot Antennas for Ham Radio, and it'll come right up. Or if you want to take a picture of the QR code down there at the bottom, it'll take you right to it. And it's an inexpensive book to buy, and talks about, by the way, it covers that double inverted delta skeleton slot, along with a bunch of other ones as well. So that's it, folks. And here's my little doggie. No, she does not have a German call sign. I just like to present she does, and so I call her D0GGY. She has no ham call sign, although she's my second operator. And there's that little QR code up there on the left, which will get you to me if you want to. So that's it.
Awesome. That was fantastic, John. Thank you so much. Let's see if I can do this without messing anything up, which I might not be able to do, but I wanted to swing it around. I don't know if you can see us, John, but I just wanted to swing it around so you can see everybody.
Sure, there you are. Hello, everybody.
Hold on. There you go. Yeah.
You're right there in the nut tree, huh?
We're at the airport.
Oh, you're at the airport.
Yeah, we're actually at the airport. So they let us meet in here second Thursday of every month, and
Is that the one where they do the glider flights?
They don't do gliders out of here. They used to do gliders out of Lagoon Valley, and they actually moved it from there. I don't know where they are now.
They're gone. It used to be up in Napa, but I think they moved out of there too.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the gliders went. The gliders are gone. They're somewhere. They're just not around here. But
I flew one of them once out of that airport quite a number of years ago.
I did too. Yeah, it was pretty fun. But hey, while we're here, any questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, Art's got a question for you, John. Are you okay to answer some questions, John?
Of course.
Got some time? And for the guys on the Zoom call, if you could throw your questions in the chat, then we can monitor your questions in chat. But Art, what do you got?
If you have a resonant antenna, can you go ahead and put one of those
Remotes?
remote matches at the base for your coax going up?
Can you use?
I'm not hearing him well
He's
enough.
saying if you have a resonant antenna, can you still make use of a remote tuner at the base of the antenna?
Of course you can, but in this case, you're just going to be tweaking it up a little bit to move it off to some unless you want to use that resonant antenna on a frequency it wasn't designed for, then it becomes a non-resonant antenna. Yeah, most of these remote auto tuners will tune up almost anywhere on the Smith chart, resonant frequencies or otherwise. So yeah, you can certainly use a remote auto tuner at the base for virtually any kind of an antenna.
So most of these remote auto tuners that you put at the base, John, these require power, right? So you got to run power out there?
Most of them are provided power up through the coax by what they call a bias T network, which is a coil capacitor that isolates the DC, and there's DC but inside of the coax as well as the RF running inside of the coax. It goes out there and there's another bias T network which takes it off and powers the microprocessor and the SWR bridge.
So you can power it right through your coax, basically.
Yeah, most remote auto tuners are powered through the coax with bias T networks.
Don.
Hi, John. If you're running full legal limit, how much is one of those auto tuners?
Did you get that? For a full legal limit auto tuners, do they make them? Are they expensive?
Yes, they do cost a bit of money. In fact, I don't know of a full limit remote auto tuner. The only one, the highest power remote auto tuner I know right now is a 600 water. That's the LDG RT 600. That's the one I use. It's nearly a full legal limit.
Anybody else? No? How about you guys on the Zoom? Any questions from our guys on the Zoom chat? Can you chat anything in? You got any questions? You can unmute at this point.
Imagine how good it works.
Well, I think we're good, John. We really want to thank you. We got something. Daniel, I'd like to build a manual outdoor tuner like the one you used at your slot antenna. How did you determine what capacitance and inductance ranges to use?
I did this incredibly pragmatically. I looked on eBay for rotary inductors. And I found a number of them, some new, some old. And usually if you buy something in the 30 microhenry range, it's fine. Because the thing is adjustable. You can put it where you want it to. And then I looked for a fairly nicely wide space, reasonably wide space capacitor of 200 or 300 puff. And both of them were quite satisfactory. You don't need to get fussy about it. You don't need to design it to a gnat's eyebrow, because chances are it's going to be tuned up in somewhere in between. Then I used banana plugs to be able to move the input to the output, make it a parallel in or a series in LMAT. That's very simple. A couple of jumpers did that. If you want some more specific information about the wiring of that, just send me an email, which it's at my email or at my website, w6nbc.com, or my email address, which you can remember, which is w6nbcmail@gmail.com, w6nbcmail. And in fact, any of you have any questions later and you want to contact me there, glad to answer your questions.
Good, everybody? Good. I think we're square. John, thanks so much, man. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you doing this for us. It's so cool that Don met you down there and you're willing to do this. We haven't been together physically for a little while. We took a few months off because of the Delta, variant came sweeping through. And
my club met for the first time this last week.
Yeah, us too. So we're just getting back in the group as well. So it was really fun to come back in and have you do this really great presentation for us.
But have me back anytime. I've got many other topics.
Excellent.
They're all focused. And you're going to find that you're going to be using Zoom even in your live meetings more and more. Zoom and COVID have changed the face of ham radio clubs.
And churches. So what do you have done?
I know that, John, you have a presentation on balance.
A presentation on balance.
And maybe next year, after the holidays, we can invite you back and you could, if you would.
Maybe February, March, we can bring you back for that.
By all means, I have a good one on building ugly balance. I have a good one on which is a brand new presentation on what's the difference between a trap and a loading coil. There's something that many hams can't answer if you ask them, what's that thing on your car? Is that a trap or a loading coil?
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Awesome, John.
Okay, all the best
Thank
to
you
you guys.
so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye. Well, that was really good. That was a great presentation.
I was impressed with this guy at Pacificon, and he was kind enough to, well, now they do this